There was a moment, just a blink, honestly, where I stood there with the door half closed behind me, the noise of the bar muffled by shock, and I wondered if I'd gone completely insane. It wasn't the man's hand brushing her knee that did it. It wasn't the way she leaned into him, lips parted slightly, the same way she used to do with me back when she still saw me as something worth touching. It was her laugh. That high, fluttery laugh I hadn't heard in months. I thought she'd lost it, or outgrown it, or buried it under the tired sighs and not tonight excuses. But no, she'd just taken it elsewhere, handed it to him like it was some secret gift he earned, and I didn't. They were in our booth, the one she and I used to claim every Friday night before life got whatever it is now, before her texts started coming later, before her phone had a password, before I started talking to the dog more than I talked to her. She hadn't seen me. Not yet. So I just stood there, frozen in some sort of sick, slow-motion nightmare, watching my wife flirt like a teenager while I clenched the car keys so tight in my hand, the metal cut into my palm. I wasn't supposed to be there. She told me she was going to a book club. A book club. On a Friday night. At 9 p.m. In heels. Do I look like I was born yesterday? But I didn't say anything earlier. I never do. I just nodded like a good little husband and said, "Have fun," like I always do, and then sat on the couch like a complete idiot, refreshing her location like I wasn't spiraling. Until I stopped refreshing and started driving. And now here I was, in the same bar where we had our first kiss, where she once whispered, "I want to grow old with you." And now she was sipping something pink and laughing into some guy's shoulder like our life together was just deleted. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I walked over to the table, slow and quiet like I was walking into a funeral. She looked up. Her face broke instantly. Panic, guilt, confusion. A million words started forming on her lips, but none of them came out. And me? I reached into my pocket, pulled off my wedding ring. It was already halfway off anyway, loose from all the weight I'd lost these past few months, tightened my grip around it until I felt it press into my bone, and placed it on the table in front of her. Then I turned around and walked out. She didn't follow, but someone else did. And that's when things really started to fall apart. The cold hit me the second I stepped outside. That kind of thin, bitter air that cuts through your shirt like it's trying to tell you something you're too numb to hear. I didn't rush to the car. I couldn't. My body felt like concrete. Heavy. Slow. My heart was trying to climb up my throat, and I could still feel the shape of the ring pressing into my palm, even though I'd already left it behind. And then I heard footsteps. Not fast. Not threatening. Just steady. Behind me. One pair. I didn't turn right away. Part of me thought, hoped, it was Kendra. Maybe she came after me. Maybe she had something to say. Maybe she finally realized I wasn't going to just sit quietly anymore while she disappeared into some stranger's lap behind my back. But it wasn't her voice that called out, "Hey man, wait up." I stopped. It was him. The guy from the table. The same guy who had his hand on her thigh like he paid rent there. Tall. Confident looking. Maybe 5 or 6 years younger than me. No wedding ring. No shame, either. He caught up and stood a few feet back, like he didn't want to spook me. Or maybe like he was deciding how far he could push this. "Look," he started, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't know she was married. I didn't say anything. I was still staring at the ground, trying to decide if it was worth punching a hole in the asphalt or just swallowing my own tongue and going home. "I'm not here to fight," he added quickly. I swear. I didn't know, man. She told me she was separated. That word made something explode behind my eyes. Separated. Like we were already done. Like I wasn't still paying her car note. Like I didn't just cook her stupid gluten-free meals 3 nights ago while she scrolled Instagram and muttered, "Thanks," without looking up. "You didn't know?" I finally muttered, mostly to myself. "Of course. Why would you? She's a great liar." He paused, and to his credit, he actually looked a little uncomfortable. "I didn't mean to blow up your life. If I had known, I wouldn't have touched her." I looked up at him for the first time, and I swear, I didn't know whether I hated him or just hated that he had the guts to tell me what my wife couldn't. "She said she didn't want to be married anymore," he continued, quieter now. "Said you were boring. Controlling. That she felt like a ghost in your house." I felt like someone hit me in the chest with a tire iron. Those were my words. That's what I felt. That I was living with a stranger who barely saw me. Who stopped touching me. Who made me feel like a chore instead of a choice. "You can hate me if you want," he said. "But she came after me. She told me you were the one pulling away. I laughed, but it wasn't really a laugh. More like the sound you make when something in your brain finally snaps out of place and you know there's no fixing it. He started backing away. I won't see her again, he promised. You deserve to know what she's saying. That's all. Then he turned and walked back into the bar like none of it even mattered. And I stood there for another full minute, just breathing like I'd forgotten how lungs were supposed to work. My wife, the woman I gave 10 years to, calling me the ghost, telling strangers I was the reason she threw away our life. I got in the car, hands shaking, and just sat there with the engine running. That's when my phone lit up. 8 missed calls. Kendra, 2:17 a.m. Where are you? Please call me. Kendra, 2:18 a.m. We need to talk. I can explain. Kendra, 2:20 a.m. Please don't do anything stupid. That last one made my blood run cold. Because I wasn't thinking about doing anything stupid, but I was thinking about doing something permanent. And it had nothing to do with hurting myself. It had everything to do with letting her watch me walk away for good and never look back. I didn't drive home. Not right away. I turned off the engine and just sat there in the dark parking lot while the bar lights behind me buzzed like flies on a carcass. I thought maybe if I just stayed still long enough, the world would rewind itself 10 minutes. Maybe I could walk in again and it would just be 2 strangers sitting at that booth. Maybe I imagined her lipstick on the rim of a wine glass that wasn't ours. Maybe that man's hand was never on her thigh. But the buzzing didn't stop. Not outside. Not in my head. Her messages kept popping up on my screen. I couldn't even look at them. The vibration alone made my stomach twist. She was trying to reel me back in before the silence got too loud. That's always how she handled things. Drown out the damage with panic and sweet words she didn't mean. But this time, I didn't give her noise. I gave her nothing. Instead of driving home, I drove to a place I hadn't been in years. My brother Owen's place. We're not close. Haven't been since the wedding, when he tried to warn me Kendra wasn't who I thought she was. I called him paranoid. Cut him off for almost a year. But that night, I texted him one word. Coming. No response. Just a porch light flicking on 15 minutes later when I pulled up. He didn't say, I told you so. Didn't smirk or try to rub it in. He just opened the door, saw my face, and quietly pointed to the guest room. The silence felt like oxygen. Like someone was finally giving me space to breathe again without asking for anything back. I didn't sleep. I just lay on the guest bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling with my phone screen facing down on the nightstand, buzzing every 15 minutes like it had a heartbeat. 20 missed calls. 3 voicemails. Dozens of texts. The last one hit me in a way none of the others did. Kendra, 3:48 a.m. You left me at the bar like I was nothing. What the hell is wrong with you? Not sorry. Not please come home. Not let's talk. Just you left me. As if that was the betrayal. That was the moment something flipped. I sat up slowly, legs like concrete, chest hollow, but eyes wide open. I wasn't sad anymore. Or confused. Or broken. I was just done. When the sun came up, I turned my phone back on and took a screenshot of her entire call log. Then I started a new folder on my laptop titled Exit. And that's where I began building the quiet storm. Bank accounts. Insurance policies. The lease agreement. I read every word like I was studying for a final exam in freedom. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Kendra was never going to see it coming. She thought silence meant defeat. But I was going to teach her what silence really feels like when the person you used to control suddenly disappears. And by the time she realized it, she wouldn't be able to call her way out of it. It was almost too easy. By the time I came home, she had already rearranged her guilt into performance mode. The apartment was cleaner than it had been in months. She was in the kitchen wearing that soft gray hoodie she knew I liked, like she'd just spent the morning being domestic and faithful. I stood in the doorway watching her fake a life that was already over. You didn't answer your phone, she said without turning around. I walked in like nothing had happened. Dropped my bag. Took off my shoes. I even mumbled, was with Owen. That part, at least, wasn't a lie. She turned slowly, trying to study my face like she could read the temperature of the storm brewing beneath. I gave her nothing. Not anger. Not pain. Just calm. She blinked like that scared her more than yelling would've. You left your ring, she said carefully, almost like she was testing the waters with her toe before diving back into the lie. At the bar. I have it. I looked her dead in the eye. Thanks. That was it. No apology. No begging. She stood there waiting for me to ask questions. Who he was, how long it had been going on, if she loved him, but I didn't. And I could see it was driving her insane. She needed drama. She needed me to cry or scream or plead so she could wear the victim's mask and feel like the one who'd been wronged. But I gave her exactly what I knew she couldn't handle: quiet. Over the next few days, I became a ghost in my own home, but a very strategic one. I was present enough to make her believe I was still holding on, but distant enough to stay invisible. I started making copies of everything. Passwords, credit card statements. I downloaded a call log app and synced it to the backup on our joint phone plan. I didn't confront her when I saw the same unknown number pop up at midnight, 1:12 a.m., 2:47. I just screenshotted everything and moved on. Meanwhile, she tried harder, almost aggressively. She started cooking again, badly, but it was something. She'd lean against the doorframe while I was on the couch and ask things like, "Do you still love me?" in that fragile voice she used to use when we first started dating. But it was empty now. She wasn't afraid I didn't love her. She was afraid I no longer cared enough to fight for her. And she was right. One night, while she was asleep, I opened her phone. The password had changed. Cute. But I'd watched her type it in twice over her shoulder earlier that day, too self-absorbed to notice I was watching. The messages were worse than I expected. Not just flirty, intimate. The kind of things we hadn't said to each other in years. Long threads with saved photos, some of them time-stamped during the hours she claimed to be running errands. And the worst part? The nickname she saved him under. Future. It took everything in me not to throw her phone across the room. But I didn't. Because I wasn't ready yet. The best revenge doesn't come loud and angry. It doesn't come in the heat of a fight, or through broken dishes, or screaming matches on the porch. No. The best revenge comes with preparation. It comes in silence. It comes when they think they've gotten away with it. When they think they've won. When they let their guard down. So I slipped her phone back where I found it, kissed her cheek the next morning, and said, "I was thinking we could take a trip soon. Just us. To reconnect." She smiled like she'd already rewritten the story in her head. She thought I was healing, falling for her again, weak, forgiving. But I was already gone. And when the time was right, I was going to make sure she felt everything I had felt, only worse. She packed like someone preparing for a honeymoon. I watched from the doorway as she folded dresses she hadn't worn for me in years, humming softly, checking herself in the mirror like this trip was proof she'd fixed everything. She kept asking if I was excited. I kept saying yes in the flattest voice possible. She didn't notice. Or maybe she chose not to. We were supposed to leave Friday morning. A quiet mountain town. No signal. Just the two of us. Her idea of starting over. My idea of ending things cleanly. The night before the trip, she curled up next to me on the couch and rested her head on my shoulder. It felt foreign, like a stranger borrowing familiarity. She traced lazy circles on my arm and whispered, "I'm really glad you didn't give up on us." That sentence almost broke me. Not because I still loved her the way I used to. That version of love was long dead. But because I realized how little she understood what was happening. She thought survival meant winning me back. She didn't realize survival, for me, meant walking away without losing myself completely. When she fell asleep, I gently moved her arm and stood up. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I took my time, because I'd already made peace with the fact that this was the last night I would ever spend beside her. I went into the spare room and pulled my bag from the closet. I'd packed it days ago. Not clothes for a weekend trip, documents, hard drives, backups. Everything I needed to start over quietly. I left the suitcases by the door so she'd think nothing was wrong. Then I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a note. Not an angry one. Not dramatic. Just honest. I told her I knew about the messages. The name she saved him under. The lies stacked on top of lies. I told her I wasn't disappearing to punish her, but because staying would destroy whatever was left of me. I told her she didn't lose me the night I walked into the bar. She lost me every time she chose secrecy over respect. I didn't say goodbye. Goodbyes invite arguments, explanations, bargaining. I didn't want any of that. At 4:30 a.m., while she was still asleep, I loaded my car. I paused once at the bedroom door, watching her breathe, wondering how someone could feel so familiar and so distant at the same time. Then I closed the door quietly behind me and left. I didn't block her number. I wanted her to wake up confused, to see the packed bags, to read the note, to realize the trip was never happening, and neither was the future she thought she still controlled. By the time I reached the highway, my phone started vibrating nonstop. Missed calls, voicemails, texts that went from confused to angry to desperate in under an hour. I didn't listen to any of them. I just drove. What she didn't know, what she wouldn't realize until much later, was that I wasn't running away. I was running towards something she could never follow. And the fallout she was about to face was only just beginning. I thought distance would quiet everything. That once I crossed enough miles, the noise in my head would finally thin out. It didn't. Silence doesn't heal you when it's full of memories. It just gives them room to echo. I ended up in a small coastal town I'd never mentioned to her before. Not once. A place so forgettable it felt safe. I rented a room above a bakery that smelled like burnt sugar every morning and spent my days walking aimlessly, pretending I was learning how to exist again. I told myself I was rebuilding. Truth was, I was just hiding, waiting for the pain to decay on its own. For a while, it worked. Her messages slowed. The calls stopped coming every hour and turned into 1 or 2 a day, then every few days. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't read them either. I deleted everything without opening it, like I was afraid the words themselves could pull me back into a life I'd already buried. Then one afternoon, I walked downstairs to grab coffee, and there she was. Not standing dramatically in the doorway, not crying, not yelling my name. She was sitting at a corner table, hands wrapped around a mug, staring at the floor like she'd been there a while, like she'd been waiting. My first instinct was to turn around and pretend I never saw her. But my feet didn't move. They never do when it matters. She looked thinner, tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. When she finally looked up and saw me, her face didn't light up with relief. It collapsed, like she'd been holding herself together just long enough to get here, and now she had nothing left. I didn't follow you, she said quickly, like she'd rehearsed it. I swear. I remembered you once said you liked the ocean because it made things feel small. I guessed. That hurt more than I expected. Not because it was romantic, but because it reminded me she did know me. She just chose not to protect what she knew. I sat down across from her. I didn't touch her. Didn't ask how she found the place. Didn't ask how long she'd been there. I already knew the answers wouldn't change anything. She told me everything then. Not the way people confess to be forgiven, but the way they talk when they finally realize forgiveness isn't coming. She admitted the affair had started months before the bar. That the man wasn't special, just available. That she liked the version of herself she became when someone new looked at her like she was exciting again. I didn't think you'd actually leave, she whispered. You always stayed. That sentence landed heavier than any insult she could have thrown at me. Because she was right. I always stayed. Through neglect. Through lies I pretended not to notice. Through nights where I felt invisible in my own marriage. Until I didn't. I told her I wasn't angry anymore. And that terrified her. Anger meant I still cared. Calm meant I'd already mourned the marriage while she was busy escaping it. She asked if there was any chance left. Any path back. Any version of us that survived this. I looked at her for a long time before answering. There is, I said quietly. Just not with me in it. She cried then. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just silent tears slipping down her face as the truth finally settled in. I stood up, wished her well, and walked back upstairs without looking back. That should have been the end. But consequences don't always arrive all at once. Sometimes they wait. I thought she'd disappear after that meeting. After I told her the truth, that whatever remained between us was no longer mine to carry. I figured she'd return to her version of control, to her safety net, maybe even to him. But she didn't. Not right away. Instead, she kept showing up. Not in person, but in small, persistent ways. An email I didn't open with the subject line. I made the biggest mistake of my life. A voicemail where she just breathed for 30 seconds before whispering, I miss my best friend. Even a postcard, handwritten, smudged ink, like we were some broken love story stuck in another decade. But I stayed silent. Every time I ignored her, I felt the weight in my chest shift. Not lighter, not darker, just different. Like the pain had stopped trying to scream and started learning how to sit beside me instead. But then I got a call. Not from her. From her boss. I almost didn't pick up, but the number came up with the company name, and curiosity, that old familiar trait that always gets me hurt, pushed me to answer. Hey, this is Marshall from Sinclair and West, the voice said. I'm sorry to bother you, but Kendra listed you as her emergency contact. We found something, and we thought you should know. My blood went cold. He didn't explain much, just that someone had submitted a formal complaint against her 2 weeks prior. That there were internal complications involving client contact outside of working hours. That things were being investigated. But that wasn't what caught me off guard. It was what he said next. She said she was going through personal trauma. That her husband abandoned her. That she was emotionally unstable due to what you did to her. My chest felt like it imploded. What I did to her. I didn't betray her. I didn't lie. I didn't cheat or manipulate. I left, yes, but only after everything she'd already torched. And now, she was rewriting the ending to make herself the one bleeding. I didn't say much on the call. Just confirmed that we were separated. That there was no abuse, no abandonment, just the quiet death of trust. He thanked me, awkwardly, then hung up. I sat there afterward, phone limp in my hand, staring at the blank wall like it owed me answers. She wasn't trying to win me back anymore. She was trying to control the story. Even in her spiral, she needed to be seen as the victim. Maybe it was to protect her job. Maybe to protect her ego. Maybe because she couldn't stand the idea that I'd left her and stayed gone. But that call changed something in me. Until then, I'd only been running. From confrontation, from chaos, from the wreckage she left behind. But now I realized silence alone wasn't enough. She'd made one mistake. She brought me back into the story, and I was about to rewrite the ending myself. I didn't go nuclear. That was never the point. I wasn't out for blood or drama. What I wanted, what I needed, was to take back the one thing she'd quietly stolen from me for years, my peace. But I wasn't going to let her drag my name through the dirt to keep hers clean. So I gathered everything. The screenshots, the text logs, the call history, the folder I'd quietly labeled exit, the same one I thought I might never need again. I wrote one long, carefully worded email. No insults, no bitterness, just the truth, backed with digital receipts and calm sentences. I sent it to her firm's HR department, CC'd Marshall, the man who'd called me. And then I logged out and let the silence return. A week passed. I didn't hear anything from her. Then, on a quiet Wednesday morning, I got one final message. From a different number. No subject line. Just this. You win. I lost everything. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care. But because I finally understood, winning wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about her losing anything. It was about me letting go. I'd spent so long twisting myself into knots, wondering what I lacked. Why I wasn't enough. What part of me had made her look elsewhere for excitement, affection, attention. But now, sitting there in my rented apartment by the sea, I realized the answer was beautifully simple. I wasn't the problem. I just stayed too long with someone who wanted chaos more than love. She didn't lose because I exposed her. She lost because she couldn't tell the truth even when I walked away without a word. But me? I found something better than revenge. I found quiet mornings. I found a job that didn't suck the life out of me. I found old friends I'd stopped calling because she always said they were too much. I found laughter again, the real kind, not the strained one I used to fake over dinner. And one day, when I wasn't even looking, I found someone new. Not someone flashy. Not someone who needed saving. Just someone who listened when I spoke, who looked me in the eye and didn't flinch when I told her the ugliest parts of what I'd been through. We're not rushing anything. No big declarations. No timelines. Just quiet days. Honest words. And peace. So no, I didn't destroy my ex-wife. I didn't ruin her life. I didn't scream, or beg, or burn it all down. I just walked out of the bar that night and never looked back. And somehow, in losing her, I found everything I'd been missing in myself.